In the previous modules, I talked about how central point of data collection in, in quantitative research is measurement and why there is focus on measurement in quantitative research. I also discussed with you the levels of measurement. Now, what is crucial is whether measures are reliable and whether they are valid, whether they are valid representations of the concepts they are supposed to be tapping. This brings us to the issue of reliability and validity of measures. Let us first take up the issue of reliability. Reliability is fundamentally concerned with issues of consistency of measures. In quantitative research, consistency is concerned with two fundamental issues. These are number one, stability, and number two, internal consistency. Stability entails asking whether a measure is stable over time. If the measure is stable, then we can be confident that the results relating to the measure for a sample of respondents do not fluctuate. This also means that if we administer a measure to a group and then re-administer it, there will be little variation over time in the results obtained. However, there are a number of problems with this approach to evaluating reliability. Respondents' answers at time 1 may influence how they reply at time 2. This may result in greater consistency between scores obtained at time 1 and time 2. Suppose we are trying to test the stability of an instrument aimed at measuring organizational commitment. Suppose we administer it in December and then again in January. It is quite possible that the responses of the respondents in the month of January are influenced by the responses they had made in the month of December. This can happen owing to memory factor. Obviously, the stability measure using these tests will have little utility. Now, another limitation of checking stability through this test-retest measure is that certain events may take place between time 1 and time 2, and that can affect the consistency adversely, because these events have the potential to influence the degree of consistency. Let us see how. For example, if a long span of time is involved, changes in the economy or in respondents' personal financial circumstances could influence their views about and desire for designer goods. Perhaps for these reasons, many, if not most reports of research findings do not appear to carry out tests of stability. Let us now take up second issue of internal stability. This meaning of reliability applies to multiple indicator measures. Multiple indicator measures are those which contain multiple questions, or what we technically call multiple items. When you have a multiple item measure, each respondent's answers to different questions or items are aggregated to form an overall score. It is quite possible that the indicators, or in other words the items in the questionnaire, do not relate to the same thing. In other words, they might lack coherence. We need to be sure that all our indicators or items are related to each other. They are not. If they are not, some of the items may actually be unrelated to what we are trying to measure, and therefore the measure might be indicative of something other than what we intend to measure. One way of testing internal reliability is the split half method. If suppose there are 10 items or indicators in a questionnaire, then these 10 indicators would be divided into two halves with 5 in each group. The indicators can be allocated to two groups either on a random basis or on an odd even basis. The degree of correlation between scores on two halves would then be calculated. In other words, the aim would be to establish whether the respondents scoring high on one of the two groups also scores high on the other group of indicators. The calculation of the correlation will yield a figure known as coefficient, and this coefficient varies between 0 and 1. 0 correlation is 1, it is one extreme, which means no correlation and therefore no internal consistency. On the other hand, 1 means perfect correlation and therefore complete internal consistency. It is usually expected that a result of 0.80 and above implies an acceptable level of internal reliability. Do not worry if this figure appears somewhat opaque. The chief point to carry away with you at this stage is that the correlation establishes how closely respondents' scores on the two groups of indicators are related among themselves. Nowadays, most researchers use a test of internal reliability known as Cronbach's alpha. Its use has grown as a result of its incorporation into computer softwares for quantitative data analysis. Let us now discuss the second issue relating to measures, namely validity. The issue of measurement validity has to do with whether a measure of a concept really measures that particular concept. In conventional usage, validity refers to the extent to which an empirical measure adequately reflects the real meaning of that particular concept under consideration. A measure of social class should measure social class only, not political orientation. A measure of political orientation should measure political orientation and not sexual permissiveness. Validity means that we are actually measuring what we say we are measuring. At the very minimum, a researcher should develop a new measure by establishing at least the face validity. That is, that the measure apparently reflects the content of the concept in question. Face validity might be established by asking other people whether the measure seems to be getting at the concept that is the focus of attention. In other words, people, possibly those with experience or expertise in the field, might be asked to act as judges to determine whether on the face of it the measure seems to reflect the concept concerned. Now, please notice that face validity is essentially an intuitive process. Now, in addition to face validity, the researcher might also seek to gauge the concurrent validity of the measure. Here, the researcher employs a criterion on which subjects are known to differ already. For example, while developing a measure of job satisfaction, one may employ the criterion of absenteeism for determining concurrent validity. The idea is that subjects scoring high on job satisfaction should have lower absenteeism, and those subjects with low job satisfaction should have higher absenteeism. So, this is concurrent validity. Another possible test for validity of a measure is predictive validity. For example, validity of a school board exams is shown in their ability to predict a student's success in college. The validity of written driver's test is determined in this sense by the relationship between scores people get on the test and their subsequent driving records. In these examples, college success and driving ability are the criteria. There is one more way to test the validity of a questionnaire-based measure. It is called convergent validity. Here, the validity of a measure is tested by comparing the measure being tested with other measures of the same concept developed through other methods. For example, if we develop a questionnaire measure of how much time managers spend on various activities such as attending meetings, touring their organization, informal discussions, and so on, we might examine its validity by tracking a number of managers. Notice, by tracking a number of managers, by using a structured observation schedule to record how much time is being spent by these managers or different managers in various activities and their frequency. Now, having discussed various aspects of reliability and validity, I shall like to underline that it should also be borne in mind that although reliability and validity are analytically distinguishable, they are related because validity presumes reliability. This means that if your measure is not reliable, it cannot be valid. In the end, I shall like to conclude my discussion on the nature of quantitative research by highlighting major preoccupations of quantitative researchers. Essentially, there are 5 major preoccupations. First is quite obvious. I have been discussing it through all the modules. It is measurement. All concepts, their operationalization and understanding is based on well-specified techniques of measurement. Second preoccupation, or let's say a very strong focus of most quantitative research is on causality or seeking explanation. Quantitative researchers are rarely concerned with a mere description of how things are. They are keen to say why things are the way they are. Quantitative approach shares this particular feature with the approach of natural sciences. Thus, quantitative researchers do not confine themselves to mere description of a phenomenon, like say caste prejudice. They would not describe it merely in terms of how much prejudice exists in a certain group of individuals or what proportion of people in a sample are highly prejudiced or what proportion are largely lacking in prejudice. The quantitative researcher shall seek to explain caste prejudice in terms of what causes it. He may try to explain this phenomenon in terms of personal characteristics such as say levels of authoritarianism, or in terms of social characteristics such as say education or social mobility experiences. In reports of research, you will often come across the idea of independent and dependent variables, and this exposition in terms of dependent and independent variables reflects the tendency to think in terms of causes and effects. The third preoccupation of quantitative research is generalization. The focus of quantitative researchers is that their findings can be generalized beyond the confines of the particular context in which the research was conducted. That is, their results can apply to individuals other than those from whom the data were collected in the study. For this purpose, they employ sophisticated methods to have representative samples, mostly what is known as probability sampling. You can learn about it from books on the subject. I cannot discuss this particular thing right now owing to paucity of time. Fourthly, yet another preoccupation of quantitative researchers is replication. In natural sciences, the norm is that scientists' biases and prejudices must not influence his research process or its findings. As a check, scientists therefore seek to replicate, that is to reproduce each other's experiments. If there is a failure to replicate and a scientist's findings cannot be reproduced, serious questions would be raised about the validity of his or her findings. Likewise, quantitative researchers in social sciences also often regard replication, or more precisely the ability to replicate, as an important ingredient of their activity. Consequently, it is often regarded as important that researcher spells out clearly his or her procedures so that they can be replicated by others, even if research does not end up being replicated at all by anyone. It must be pointed out here, however, that replication is not a high status activity in the natural or social sciences because it is often regarded as pedestrian and uninspiring. Moreover, standard replications do not form the basis for attractive articles as far as many academic journal editors are concerned. Consequently, replication of research appear in print far less frequently than might be supposed. Final and the most important preoccupation of quantitative research is use of robust statistical tools. Acceptance and rejection of hypothesis is done on the basis of the results provided by statistical methods. Statistics is a field of study in its own right. Those wanting to pursue quantitative research have to delve deep into it. With this, I come to the end of my rather brief description of the nature of quantitative research. My hope is that it might have given you a few bits of insight in this vast field of knowledge and that it might encourage some of you to look for more information regarding deeper subtleties of quantitative research. Thank you.